The grandeur of the Harmony Grand Hotel shined brightly in the bustling city, and its polished walls symbolized elegance and success. But behind the shimmering facade lay a quiet tension within its very foundation. Sarah Johnson, the owner and visionary of this magnificent establishment, stepped into her creation as an unrecognized guest. What awaited her wasn't the seamless luxury she had worked tirelessly to build, but cold stares, dismissive remarks, and an unrelenting sense of exclusion. How could a place meant to welcome everyone with open arms become a beacon of bias and judgment? And when the very hands you entrusted to uphold your vision betray it, what do? Before we dive into this captivating story of revelations, resilience, and reform, comment below where you're watching from today. If this story intrigues you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another tale of courage and transformation. Imagine owning one of the finest hotels in the city, a symbol of hard work and unparalleled vision. This is the story of Sarah Johnson, a self-made entrepreneur who turned her dream into reality by creating the Harmony Grand Hotel, a luxurious haven for travelers. Sarah had invested her heart and soul into perfecting every detail of the establishment, envisioning it as a sanctuary where guests from all walks of life could feel welcomed, respected, and cherished. After years of overseeing operations and observing from a distance, Sarah decided it was time to experience the hotel from an entirely different perspective. Instead of relying on reports or guest feedback, she would walk through the doors of the Harmony Grand as an unassuming guest. She planned to evaluate her staff and operations firsthand, without the influence of her authority or reputation. Bookmark by weekday to execute her plan, ensuring her visit wouldn't raise suspicion. She traded her usual elegant attire for a casual look, well-worn jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and comfortable sneakers. With minimal makeup and her hair tied in a simple ponytail, she wanted to blend into the crowd. Her goal was simple, yet profound, to see if her team upheld the values she had worked so hard to instill, regardless of appearance or status. As Sarah arrived at the hotel's grand entrance, her heart swelled with pride. The Harmony Grand was a masterpiece of architecture and design. Its imposing glass facade reflected the bustling city skyline, while the interior radiated warmth and sophistication. The lobbies sparkled under the glow of crystal chandeliers, casting soft light over the polished marble floors. Elegant art pieces adorned the walls, and the subtle aroma of fresh flowers blended seamlessly with the luxurious scent of leather furnishings. For a moment, Sarah paused to take it all in, marveling at what she had built. Everything seemed perfect, from the gentle hum of conversations to the faint notes of classical music playing in the background. Guests moved through the space quickly, were greeted warmly by the concierge, and were assisted by attentive bellhops. It was a seamless display of service, at least on the surface. With a deep breath, Sarah approached the front desk, eager to observe the check-in process through the eyes of an average guest. Her presence was unremarkable, and she was confident her casual appearance would allow her to fly under the radar. Little did she know, her expectations of warmth and hospitality would soon be challenged in ways she had never anticipated. As Sarah walked toward the front desk, she couldn't help but notice the receptionist, a young man named Ethan, focused intently on his computer screen. His crisp uniform and polished demeanor gave him an air of professionalism, but his body language conveyed indifference. Sarah stood patiently for a moment, waiting for him to acknowledge her presence. Sarah cleared her throat gently after what felt like an eternity, hoping to catch Ethan's attention. He glanced up briefly, gazing at a casual outfit and lack of luggage. His expression was flat, almost dismissive, as if he had already made a judgment about her. Without a word, he returned to his screen. Sarah, undeterred but slightly surprised, decided to speak up. "Good afternoon," she said, her tone polite yet firm. "I'd like to check in, please." Ethan raised his eyebrows and finally gave her his full attention. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, the judgment in his gaze unmistakable. "Do you have a reservation?" he asked, his tone laced with subtle condescension. "Bookmark? No," Sarah replied calmly. "I was hoping to book a room for tonight." Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line as he seemed to evaluate whether she belonged in the Harmony Grand. "This is a luxury hotel, ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with superiority. "We have a certain standard for our guests. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the nearby inns." Sarah felt a pang of disbelief at his words. She had always envisioned her hotel as one where everyone, regardless of background or appearance, was treated with dignity and respect. Yet here she was, standing in front of her receptionist, being judged and dismissed based on her attire. Forcing herself to remain calm, Sarah asked, "Is there a problem with booking a room here?" Ethan sighed dramatically, clearly uninterested in providing further assistance. "We're quite full at the moment," he replied, though Sarah noticed the guest ledger on his desk indicated multiple rooms were available. "Like I said, maybe another place would be a better fit." Sarah's initial shock began to settle into a quiet determination. She could have easily revealed her identity, forcing Ethan to scramble for an apology and accommodations, but doing so wouldn't address the root of the problem. Instead, she decided to see just how far this attitude extended. "I'm willing to pay the full rate," Sarah said, her voice steady. "Could you please check for availability?" Ethan hesitated, his irritation evident. With a reluctant sigh, he began typing into the system. After a moment, he nodded curtly. "We do have one room available," he admitted, though his tone suggested he wasn't pleased. "Thank you," Sarah replied, taking the room key he handed her with a practiced smile. As she walked away from the desk, a nagging feeling settled in her chest. The interaction had left her shaken, not because of how she had been treated, but because of what it implied. If her staff could treat her this way, how many other guests had faced similar indifference or outright discrimination? Determined to dig deeper, Sarah resolved to observe every aspect of her hotel's service during her stay. This encounter at the front desk, she realized, was only the beginning. Still reeling from her frosty reception at the front desk, Sarah decided to explore other areas of the hotel to see if this experience was an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern. She stepped into the lobby lounge, a beautifully designed space where guests could relax, socialize, or simply take in the ambience. She selected a cozy armchair near the center of the room and observed the interactions between the staff and the guests. At first glance, everything appeared seamless. The staff moved efficiently, their polished uniforms and practiced smiles radiating an air of professionalism. But as Sarah watched more closely, she began to notice subtle yet unmistakable differences in how guests were treated. A couple dressed in designer clothes approached the front desk. Ethan, the same receptionist who had dismissed Sarah, greeted them warmly with a smile. His tone was friendly, and he even offered to upgrade their room to enhance their stay. Sarah's chest tightened as she recalled his cold, dismissive attitude toward her just moments earlier. Turning her attention back to the lounge, Sarah saw servers delivering drinks and snacks to well-dressed guests, their interactions marked by genuine warmth. Meanwhile, a casually dressed guest seated near her waved politely to get a server's attention, but was ignored. The man waited patiently, his expression a mix of confusion and disappointment, before finally standing to approach the bar himself. Sarah's heart sank as the realization crystallized in her mind. Appearances were dictating the level of service her guests received. Wanting to test another part of the hotel, Sarah made her way to the Harmony Grand's award-winning restaurant. The space was stunning, with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city and its tables elegantly set with fine china and sparkling crystal. At the entrance, Sarah was met by a young hostess named Claire, who was scrolling through a tablet. Claire barely looked up as Sarah approached, her eyes flickering briefly over Sarah's casual attire. "Good evening," Sarah said politely, trying to initiate a warm interaction. Claire's brow furrowed slightly, and her tone was cool as she asked, "Do you have a reservation?" "No," Sarah replied, her voice steady, "but I was hoping to get a table for one. It's just me." Without even glancing at the seating area, Claire shook her head. "I'm sorry. We're fully booked tonight," she said briskly. From her vantage point, Sarah could see several empty tables scattered throughout the restaurant. They were set and ready for guests, but there was no visible rush or wait list. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked, gesturing toward the open tables. "I wouldn't mind waiting if one becomes available." "They're reserved," Claire replied curtly, her tone leaving no room for further discussion. Sarah felt a surge of frustration, but remained composed. "I see," she said, offering a polite smile before turning to leave. As she exited the restaurant, Sarah glanced over her shoulder and noticed a couple entering the dining area. Like her, they didn't seem to have a reservation. But unlike her, they were welcomed with a smile and promptly escorted to one of the reserved tables. The disparity in treatment was undeniable, and it stung more than Sarah had anticipated. She had envisioned the Harmony Grand as a beacon of inclusivity, where every guest was treated with dignity. Yet here she was, witnessing her staff divide guests into categories of worthy and unworthy based on superficial judgments. Sarah returned to the lounge, her mind racing with questions. Was this behavior confined to a few staff members, or was it indicative of a deeper cultural issue within her hotel? How many guests had left feeling dismissed or undervalued, their experiences tarnished by the very people meant to make them feel at home? Her thoughts were interrupted when her phone buzzed with a message from her assistant, Emily. "Everything was running smoothly at the hotel?" the text read. Sarah hesitated, tempted to reply with the truth, but decided against it. She needed more information before she could act. "So far, so good," she typed back, her words feeling like a hollow reassurance. Determined to uncover the full extent of the issue, Sarah resolved to press on. Tomorrow, she would delve deeper into the Harmony Grand's operations. Tonight's experiences had shown her that something was deeply wrong, and she wouldn't stop until she understood exactly what had gone awry. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She hadn't come this far to be deterred by a few uncomfortable encounters. She had to dig deeper to understand the full extent of the problem. After getting ready, she decided to explore other areas of the hotel, including its services, staff interactions, and overall guest experience. Sarah's first stop was the Harmony Grand Spa, one of the property's most celebrated features. The spa had built a reputation for luxurious treatments, designed to leave guests feeling rejuvenated and pampered. As Sarah approached the sleek reception desk, she was greeted by a young woman named Vanessa. Vanessa offered a brief smile that quickly faded as she took in Sarah's appearance. Her eyes flicked over Sarah's simple attire, and her tone turned professional but distant. "Good morning. Do you have a reservation?" "No," Sarah replied, maintaining her composure. "I was wondering if there might be an opening for a massage later today." Vanessa's fingers tapped lightly on her keyboard as she glanced at the booking schedule. "Unfortunately, we're fully booked for the day," she said with a tight smile. "I might be able to fit you in tomorrow, but we do prioritize reservations." From where Sarah stood, she could see that the spa was far from crowded. The tranquil lounge area was mostly empty, and the treatment rooms appeared to be available. Sarah's instincts told her that Vanessa's reluctance wasn't due to a lack of space, but rather a judgment of who deserved the spa's luxury services. "I understand," Sarah said politely. "I'll check back tomorrow." She left the spa, adding another note to the mental list she was building of subtle but telling interactions. Determined not to let one interaction cloud her judgment, Sarah decided to visit the pool next. The Harmony Grand's pool was an oasis of relaxation, surrounded by lush greenery and private cabanas. As she entered, she noticed a mix of guests enjoying the facilities, but again, a pattern emerged. Staff members eagerly attended to certain guests, those in designer swimwear or accessorized with luxury items, offering towels, refreshments, and cheerful conversation. Meanwhile, others dressed in simpler attire were left to fend for themselves. Sarah found a quiet spot by the pool to observe further, her growing frustration tempered by her resolve to gather a complete picture. Later that afternoon, Sarah decided to order room service, hoping to see how the service differed when staff didn't interact with her face-to-face. She called the front desk and requested a light meal, a salad, a sandwich, and sparkling water. The voice on the other end of the line was polite, and they assured her the order would arrive within 30 minutes. True to their word, the knock on her door came right on time. When Sarah opened the door, she was greeted by a middle-aged server dressed in a neatly pressed uniform. His demeanor was polite, but Sarah noticed a subtle shift in his expression as his eyes swept over her casual appearance. It was a fleeting moment, but the discomfort in his gaze was unmistakable. Sarah thanked him warmly, tipping generously. The man quickly averted his eyes and muttered a rushed, "You're welcome," before leaving. The interaction, while professional, felt transactional and lacked the warmth she had seen her staff extend to other guests. That evening, Sarah decided to give the hotel restaurant another try. Perhaps her earlier experience had been an anomaly, and this time she could observe how the staff handled dinner service. To her surprise, she was seated without issue, though the hostess, Claire, seemed slightly skeptical as she led Sarah to a small table in the corner of the room. From her vantage point, Sarah watched the dining area come alive as the evening progressed. The differences in treatment were striking. Guests dressed in elegant evening wear were showered with attention, servers checking in frequently, offering recommendations and ensuring every detail of their meal was perfect. Meanwhile, others dressed more casually like Sarah and were treated with polite indifference. Their tables were visited infrequently, and requests were met with a measured efficiency rather than genuine care. Sarah's observations painted a clear picture. A culture of favoritism had taken root within the Harmony Grand. The disparity in treatment wasn't limited to one or two employees. It was systemic, affecting every aspect of the guest experience. As Sarah returned to her room, her mind raced with questions. How had her hotel strayed so far from her vision of inclusivity and warmth? Was this behavior encouraged, or was it the result of unspoken biases among the staff? Sarah knew that the answers wouldn't come easily, but she was determined to find them. Tomorrow, she resolved to expand her investigation, seeking out staff members who might shed light on the situation. Sarah woke up the next morning with a sense of resolve. The incidents she had witnessed over the past 2 days had already painted a troubling picture, but she needed to gather more information before making any conclusions. Her casual attire and anonymous presence had proven to be effective tools for revealing the unfiltered reality of her hotel's culture. After a light breakfast in her room, Sarah decided to spend the day observing and interacting with more staff members. She planned to take her time, blending in as an average guest while mentally cataloging every interaction and detail. Book around midday, she ventured down to the lounge, intending to relax and gauge the behavior of the staff. She noticed a group of elegantly dressed guests seated nearby, laughing and chatting. The staff attended to them with cheerful smiles, offering complimentary drinks and snacks. Meanwhile, Sarah sat quietly, observing as staff members moved around her without acknowledgement. As the hours passed, Sarah's frustration began to build. The differences in treatment were no longer subtle, they were glaringly obvious. Her experience had shown her that her hotel's culture wasn't just flawed, it was actively discriminatory. But the most humiliating moment came later. During afternoon naps, when Sarah sat in the lobby, reviewing her notes, she noticed 2 security guards approaching her, their expressions stern. She glanced around, unsure of what had prompted their attention, when one of them stopped directly in front of her. "Ma'am, we need you to leave," the guard said firmly. Sarah blinked in surprise. "Excuse me? We've been informed that you're causing a disturbance," the other guard added, though his tone lacked conviction. "Management has requested that you vacate the premises." Sarah felt a wave of indignation and disbelief wash over her. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't argued with anyone, and had certainly not caused a scene. "I'm a paying guest," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I've done nothing wrong. What exactly am I being asked to leave for?" The first guard hesitated, his expression softening slightly, but he quickly regained his professional composure. "We're just following orders, ma'am. If you refuse to leave, we'll have to escort you out." Sarah's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she noticed other guests turning to watch the interaction. She felt a bitter sting of humiliation as whispers spread among the onlookers. At that moment, Sarah was tempted to reveal her identity, assert her authority, and make it clear that this was her hotel. But she stopped herself. If she reacted out of anger, she would lose the opportunity to fully uncover the systemic issues she was witnessing. "All right," Sarah said, standing slowly. Her voice was measured, but inside she was seething. "I'll leave." The security guards followed closely as she walked toward the main entrance. Once outside, she took a deep breath, the cool evening air calming her frayed nerves. The experience had been degrading, but it had also solidified her determination. Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed her assistant, Emily, who answered on the first ring. "Emily," Sarah said, her voice steady but firm. "We have a serious problem. I need you to meet me at the office first thing tomorrow morning. We're going to figure out exactly what's happening at the Harmony Grand." Emily's tone immediately shifted, sensing the urgency in Sarah's voice. "Of course, Sarah. What's going on?" "It's a long story," Sarah replied, glancing back at the hotel's glowing facade. "But I suspect there's a culture of discrimination running right under my nose. We need to dig deeper, quietly, and figure out how far this goes. I'll explain everything tomorrow." After hanging up, Sarah stood outside the hotel for a moment longer, letting the events of the day sink in. She had dreamed of the Harmony Grand being a place of warmth and inclusion, a sanctuary for all. But her anonymous stay had exposed a harsh truth. The very culture she had worked so hard to create had been corrupted. Sarah squared her shoulders, her resolve hardening. This wasn't the end of her journey. It was the beginning. Tomorrow, she would step back into her role as the hotel's owner, not to demand apologies or flaunt her authority, but to uncover the truth and restore the Harmony Grand to the vision she had always held for it. The following morning, Sarah sat in her office, a cup of coffee in hand, waiting for Emily to arrive. Her mind raced with thoughts of everything she had witnessed during her anonymous stay at the Harmony Grand. By the time Emily walked in, notebook and laptop in tow, Sarah was already strategizing her next steps. Emily looked concerned as she sat down. "Okay, Sarah," she said, her voice steady but curious. "Tell me what's been happening." Sarah took a deep breath and began recounting her experiences over the past few days. She described the dismissive receptionist, the judgmental hostess, the disparity in service at the lounge, and the spa receptionist's reluctance to accommodate her. She even detailed the humiliating encounter with security. As Sarah spoke, Emily's expression shifted from surprise to outrage. "That's completely unacceptable," Emily said, her tone firm. "This isn't just a one-off issue. It sounds like a systemic problem." "I agree," Sarah replied, "but I don't think it stops at the individual staff members. There's something deeper going on. The behavior I saw was too consistent, too ingrained. I need to understand the full scope of this issue before we can fix it." Sarah then outlined her plan. She would investigate further, starting with the guest feedback and complaints received over the years. Simultaneously, Emily would help identify staff members willing to speak openly about their experiences. Together, they would uncover the root cause of the discriminatory culture that had taken hold. Emily nodded. "I'll start by pulling records from the past few years. If this has been happening for a while, there should be patterns in the guest feedback." By mid-afternoon, Emily had gathered a comprehensive stack of guest complaints, which the two began to sift through. At first glance, many of the reviews were positive, praising the hotel's luxurious amenities and excellent service. But as they dug deeper, troubling trends began to emerge. One complaint read, "I felt like I didn't belong here. The staff barely acknowledged me, even though I paid the same rates as everyone else. It's disappointing to feel judged because of how you look." Another guest described being turned away from the restaurant despite seeing empty tables, echoing Sarah's own experience. Still another wrote, "I asked for an upgrade and was told none were available, but moments later, another guest received one without hesitation. I guess I just didn't look the part." Sarah's chest tightened as she read through the reports. These weren't isolated incidents, they were part of a pattern. Guests who didn't conform to a certain image were routinely dismissed, overlooked, or outright ignored. As the pile of complaints grew, Emily glanced at Sarah, her voice quiet but resolute. "This isn't just disappointing, Sarah. It's a cultural failure." Sarah nodded grimly. "We need more insight from the staff," she said. "Someone who's been here long enough to see what's really happening." "Do you have anyone in mind?" Emily hesitated for a moment, then said, "Maria? She's been with us for nearly a decade. She's honest and observant, but she's always been a little hesitant to speak out. If anyone knows what's going on behind the scenes, it's her." Sarah agreed, and Emily arranged for Maria to meet with them that afternoon. When Maria arrived, she looked visibly nervous, her hands fidgeting as she sat down across from Sarah and Emily. "Maria," Sarah began gently, offering a reassuring smile. Thank you for coming. I want you to know that this conversation is confidential, and there will be no repercussions for anything you share. I just need your honesty." Maria nodded, her voice quiet as she replied, "Of course, Miss Johnson. I'll do my best." Sarah leaned forward slightly, her tone calm but firm. "Maria, you've been with the Harmony Grand for a long time. Have you noticed anything unusual about how guests are treated? Specifically, have you ever seen or experienced situations where guests were judged or treated differently based on their appearance or background?" Maria hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. "Yes," she admitted after a moment. "It's not something anyone says outright, but it's there. Over the years, I've seen guests who didn't look wealthy enough get ignored or treated poorly. It's subtle sometimes, but it's hard to miss once you notice it." Sarah's heart sank. "Do you know why this is happening? Is it just individual behavior, or is it coming from somewhere higher up?" Maria hesitated again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think it's both. Some of the staff just follow what they see others doing. But Mr. Bennett?" She trailed off, her eyes flickering to Emily. "Go on," Sarah encouraged gently. Maria took a deep breath. "Mr. Bennett never says it outright, but he makes it clear who he thinks deserves priority. He'll praise the staff for going above and beyond for certain guests, but when it's someone who doesn't fit his idea of a luxury guest, he acts like they're not worth the effort. It's like an unspoken rule. Everyone knows his preferences, so they follow them to stay in his good graces." Sarah exchanged a glance with Emily, her expression darkening. Mr. Bennett was a senior manager, someone Sarah had trusted to uphold the hotel's values. If he was fostering this culture, the problem ran deeper than she had feared. "Thank you for your honesty, Maria," Sarah said, her voice steady. "This helps more than you know. We're going to address this, but I need your trust and patience as we work through it." Maria nodded, offering a tentative smile. "I just want the hotel to be the place you dreamed it would be, Miss Johnson." As Maria left, Sarah turned to Emily. "It's worse than I thought," she said, her voice laced with disappointment. "If Bennett is behind this, we need to act carefully. He's been with us for years, and he'll fight to protect himself." Emily nodded, her expression resolute. "We'll start gathering more evidence. Staff testimonies, guest complaints, anything we can use to confront him." Sarah took a deep breath, her determination unwavering. "We'll get to the bottom of this," she said firmly, "and we'll fix it, no matter how long it takes." The revelation about Mr. Bennett weighed heavily on Sarah. He had been with the Harmony Grand almost from the beginning, earning her trust with his polished demeanor and ability to manage high-profile guest relations. But Maria's testimony suggested a more sinister side to his influence. If Mr. Bennett had been subtly encouraging discriminatory practices, Sarah needed concrete proof to confront him effectively. Over the next few days, Sarah and Emily focused their efforts on gathering evidence. Emily dug through years of financial records, searching for any irregularities tied to Bennett's oversight. Meanwhile, Sarah quietly interviewed more staff members, asking about their experiences and observations regarding guest treatment. The stories that emerged were both illuminating and troubling. Several employees, particularly those in junior roles, spoke of feeling pressured to prioritize wealthy-looking guests. One housekeeper described being instructed to spend extra time preparing rooms for certain clientele, while another staff member admitted they were told to politely dissuade walk-in guests who didn't fit the hotel's luxury image. "Bennett never gives direct orders," one server explained to Sarah in a private meeting. "But he doesn't have to. It's the way he talks about guests. If someone isn't dressed a certain way or doesn't seem important, he'll make subtle comments about not wasting too much time on them. It's like he's teaching us to see people as valuable or not based on their looks." As Sarah listened to these accounts, her anger grew. The culture she had dreamed of fostering, a culture of inclusivity and respect, had been corrupted by a man she had entrusted with significant authority. But it wasn't until Emily uncovered a series of suspicious financial transactions that the full scope of Bennett's actions came to light. "Sarah," Emily said one evening, rushing into Sarah's office with a stack of documents. "You're going to want to see this." Sarah looked up, her curiosity piqued. "What did you find?" Emily placed the documents on the desk and began explaining. Over the past 3 years, small but consistent amounts of money had been funneled out of the hotel's operating budget. The expenditures were listed under vague categories, such as miscellaneous expenses or client outreach, but there was no corresponding record of actual projects or activities tied to these funds. At first, the amount seemed inconspicuous, just a few $100s here and there. But when Emily totaled the transactions, the figure was staggering. "We're talking tens of thousands of dollars," Emily said. "And all of it points back to accounts linked to Bennett's department." Sarah's stomach tightened as she flipped through the pages. "Are you sure about this?" Emily nodded. "I traced the transactions through multiple accounts. It's deliberately convoluted, but it all leads to one personal account, Bennett's." The realization hit Sarah like a cold wave. Bennett hadn't just been undermining the hotel's values with his discriminatory behavior. He had also been stealing from the business. "This changes everything," Sarah said, her voice calm but resolute. "If Bennett has been embezzling funds, we have legal grounds to not only terminate his employment, but also pursue charges. We need to handle this carefully." Emily agreed. "We should document everything thoroughly and involve someone from the board. This isn't just an internal issue, it's a betrayal of trust at every level." Sarah nodded. "Contact Mr. Carter. He's always supported the vision for this hotel, and his integrity is beyond question. I'll need him in the room when I confront Bennett." The following day, Sarah arranged a private meeting in the hotel's boardroom, inviting both Bennett and Mr. Carter. She prepared meticulously, compiling guest complaints, staff testimonies, and financial documents into a folder. This wasn't just about confronting Bennett. It was about sending a clear message that the Harmony Grand would not tolerate corruption or discrimination. When Bennett arrived, he looked confident, his usual air of self-assuredness on full display. He greeted Sarah with a polite smile, clearly unaware of the storm about to unfold. Mr. Carter arrived shortly after, his expression neutral but attentive as he took his seat beside Sarah. "Thank you both for coming," Sarah began, her tone measured but firm. "I've called this meeting to address some serious issues within the Harmony Grand." Bennett raised an eyebrow, his smile faltering slightly. "Of course, Miss Johnson. I'm always happy to assist with guest relations or any concerns you might have." Sarah didn't waste time. She opened the folder and slid a stack of documents across the table toward Bennett. "These are guest complaints and staff testimonies describing a pattern of discriminatory behavior. Guests who didn't fit a certain image have been ignored, dismissed, or turned away. And staff have told me that you've fostered this culture through your subtle but clear preferences." Bennett's expression darkened, but he quickly masked it. "With all due respect, Sarah, I believe you're mistaken. Our staff is trained to uphold high standards, and sometimes that means certain guests don't meet those standards." Sarah's gaze didn't waver. "Our standards were never meant to discriminate against guests based on their appearance or perceived status. That's not the culture I built, and it's not one I'll allow to continue." Before Bennett could respond, Sarah placed another stack of documents on the table. "And then there's this. Evidence of financial misconduct. Over the past 3 years, funds from the hotel's operating budget have been funneled into a personal account." "Your account?" Bennett's confidence cracked. His face paled, and his hands gripped the edge of the table. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "There must be some kind of mistake." Mr. Carter, who had been silent until now, leaned forward, his tone firm. "Bennett, we have documentation tracing these transactions directly to you. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's theft." Bennett's shoulders slumped as the weight of the evidence bore down on him. He tried to offer a weak defense, mumbling about maintaining the hotel's image and using the funds for necessary expenses, but it was clear he had no way out. Sarah's voice was steady as she delivered her final words. "Mr. Bennett, your actions have betrayed this hotel, its staff, and its guests. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties, and we will be pursuing legal action for your embezzlement. You've not only failed to uphold our values, you've undermined them at every turn." Bennett rose shakily from his chair, casting a bitter glance at Sarah before leaving the room. His once polished reputation was now in ruins. As the door closed behind him, Mr. Carter turned to Sarah. "You handled that with remarkable strength," he said. The Harmony Grand is in good hands. Sarah allowed herself a small smile, though her resolve remained firm. This was just the beginning. The road to restoring her hotel's culture and values would be long, but she was ready to face it head-on. The weight of the confrontation with Bennett lingered in Sarah's mind as she and Emily worked tirelessly to address the fallout. While his termination marked the end of one chapter, it also underscored the enormity of the task ahead. The toxic culture that Bennett had fostered wasn't something that could be eradicated overnight. It required systemic change, starting from the ground up. Bookmark. Sarah and Emily began by conducting a thorough review of every department, focusing on the guest experience and internal staff dynamics. With Mr. Carter's support, they implemented an anonymous feedback system for employees, encouraging them to share their experiences without fear of reprisal. To Sarah's relief, several staff members used the opportunity to come forward, shedding light on previously hidden issues. One testimony stood out. A junior concierge described how staff were often pressured to adhere to an unspoken hierarchy of guests. "We were told to read the room," the employee wrote. "If someone looked important, we were expected to go above and beyond. But if they didn't fit the image, it was okay to be dismissive or keep interactions short. No one said it outright, but we all knew what was expected." Another staff member, a housekeeper, detailed how Bennett would inspect guest lists personally, making quiet comments about who deserved the 5-star treatment and who didn't. "It made me uncomfortable," the housekeeper confessed, but no one wanted to challenge him. He was in charge, and his word was final. Sarah read through each testimony with a mix of anger and sadness. These accounts confirmed what she had suspected. Bennett's influence had shaped a culture that prioritized appearances over genuine hospitality. The deeper they delved, the more they uncovered. Emily discovered additional discrepancies in the hotel's financial records, including bonuses paid to select staff members who had aligned themselves closely with Bennett. These bonuses weren't tied to performance metrics or guest satisfaction, but seemed to reward compliance with his discriminatory practices. "It's like he created a loyalty system," Emily remarked as she reviewed the documents. "If you followed his unspoken rules, you were rewarded. If you didn't, you were sidelined." Sarah clenched her fists, her determination hardening. "Not anymore," she said firmly. "This ends here." To address the issue transparently, Sarah convened a meeting with her management team. She knew it wouldn't be easy, as many of them had worked under Bennett's shadow for years. But it was essential to reset expectations and rebuild trust from the top down. As the managers gathered in the conference room, Sarah took a moment to compose herself. When she spoke, her voice was steady but resolute. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "Over the past few weeks, I've been conducting an investigation into the culture of our hotel. What I've uncovered has been deeply troubling." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. "There has been a consistent pattern of discriminatory behavior within our team, with guests being judged and treated differently based on their appearance or perceived status. This is not the Harmony Grand I envisioned, and it is not the hotel I want us to be." The room was silent, the managers exchanging uneasy glances. "Mr. Bennett's influence has played a significant role in fostering this culture," Sarah continued. "But this isn't just about one person. It's about all of us, the choices we've made, the behaviors we've allowed, and the standards we've upheld. Starting today, that changes." She outlined a series of immediate reforms. Mandatory training. Every staff member, from junior employees to senior managers, would undergo comprehensive training on inclusivity, empathy, and equitable guest treatment. Transparent policies. Clear guidelines for service expectations would be established, ensuring that every guest, regardless of appearance or background, received the same level of care. Accountability measures. A system for monitoring staff performance and behavior would be implemented, with regular reviews to ensure compliance with the hotel's values. "I know this will take time," Sarah said, her gaze sweeping across the room. "But I'm committed to seeing it through. The Harmony Grand is more than a luxury hotel. It's a reflection of the values we hold. If we're not treating every guest with respect and dignity, we're failing." The managers nodded, some looking chastened, others resolute. One of the senior managers, Olivia, spoke up. Sarah, I think I speak for everyone when I say thank you for addressing this. Many of us saw the favoritism but didn't feel empowered to challenge it. It's time we all took responsibility. Sarah offered a small smile. Thank you, Olivia. This is a team effort, and I'm counting on all of you to help rebuild what we've lost. Over the next several days, the changes began to take shape. Sarah personally led training sessions, sharing her vision for the Harmony Grand and emphasizing the importance of creating a welcoming environment for all guests. Emily worked tirelessly to implement the new feedback and monitoring systems, ensuring that employees felt supported and valued. Word of the reforms spread quickly among the staff, many of whom expressed relief and gratitude. For those who had felt silenced under Bennett's leadership, the changes represented a fresh start, a chance to work in an environment that upheld fairness and integrity. For Sarah, the process was both exhausting and invigorating. She knew there was still much work to be done, but the progress they were making gave her hope. The Harmony Grand was on its way to becoming the inclusive, welcoming space she had always envisioned. With the groundwork laid for reform, Sarah threw herself into the next phase of her mission, restoring the Harmony Grand's reputation. She knew that trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired, but she was determined to rebuild it through action, transparency, and persistence. Sarah began by reaching out to former guests who had filed complaints about their experiences. In a personal gesture, she wrote to each one, apologizing for the treatment they had received and inviting them back for a complimentary stay. The letters, written in Sarah's own hand, emphasized her commitment to ensuring no guest would ever feel unwelcome at her hotel again. One letter read, "Dear Miss Wilson, I recently became aware of the challenges you faced during your visit to the Harmony Grand. I want to personally apologize for the way you were treated and assure you that steps are being taken to address the issues you encountered. This hotel was built on a foundation of respect and inclusivity, and I am committed to restoring those values. Please accept my invitation for a complimentary stay so you can experience the Harmony Grand as it was always meant to be, a place where everyone is welcome." The responses were overwhelmingly positive. Many guests expressed surprise and gratitude at the personal touch, and some even accepted Sarah's invitation, eager to see the changes she was implementing. Internally, the hotel underwent a transformation. Sarah and Emily worked closely with department managers to refine service protocols, ensuring consistency and fairness in every aspect of the guest experience. From check-in to housekeeping, every team member was trained to treat guests with the same level of care and attention, regardless of their background or appearance. One of Sarah's most significant changes was the introduction of regular team meetings. These sessions, held weekly, provided a platform for staff to share their insights, voice concerns, and offer suggestions for improvement. Sarah encouraged open communication, making it clear that every employee's perspective was valued. During one such meeting, a young bellhop named Marcus spoke up. "I've noticed a big difference in how we're approaching guests now," he said. "It feels more genuine. Before, there was this unspoken rule about who we should prioritize, but now it feels like we're finally treating everyone equally. I think guests are noticing too." Sarah smiled, encouraged by his words. "Thank you for sharing that, Marcus. That's exactly the kind of environment we're striving for. And remember, if you ever see behavior that goes against these values, you have the power to speak up." The changes didn't go unnoticed by the guests. Reviews began to reflect the hotel's evolving culture. One guest wrote, "I've stayed at the Harmony Grand several times, but this visit was different. The staff were warm, attentive, and genuine in a way I hadn't seen before. It's clear they've made some big changes, and I couldn't be more impressed." Another guest shared, "I came back because of an invitation from the owner herself. It's rare to see a business take accountability the way this hotel has. I felt valued and respected from the moment I walked in. They've truly turned things around." Sarah also prioritized the well-being of her staff. She knew that a culture of inclusivity couldn't exist without ensuring her employees felt supported and empowered. She implemented anonymous feedback systems where staff could report concerns or suggest improvements without fear of retaliation. These channels became a vital tool for fostering transparency and trust within the team. One day, Emily approached Sarah with a piece of feedback from the anonymous system. A staff member wrote about how they've noticed a lot more kindness and collaboration among the team. Emily said, "They said it feels like people are working together now instead of competing for recognition." Sarah's heart swelled with pride. The Harmony Grand was becoming not just a better hotel, but a better workplace. As the weeks turned into months, the hotel's transformation became undeniable. Sarah often walked through the lobby, observing the interactions between staff and guests. She saw warmth in the smiles of her employees, genuine care in their gestures, and a sense of pride in their work. One evening, Sarah paused in the lounge, watching as a server approached a guest seated alone. The guest was casually dressed and looked slightly out of place, but the server treated them with the same attentiveness and charm as any other patron. "Can I get you anything else?" the server asked with a warm smile. The guests shook their head. "No, thank you. Everything's been wonderful." Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction. This was what she had envisioned all along, a hotel where every guest felt valued, regardless of their appearance or status. That night, Sarah sat in her office, reflecting on the journey so far. The road had been challenging, filled with moments of doubt and frustration, but it had also been deeply rewarding. The Harmony Grand was finally becoming the inclusive, welcoming space she had always dreamed it could be. With Emily's support and the dedication of her staff, Sarah knew they were building something extraordinary. The Harmony Grand wasn't just a luxury hotel. It was a symbol of fairness, integrity, and respect. A place where everyone, no matter their background, could feel at home. Months after the reforms began, the Harmony Grand Hotel had undergone a remarkable transformation. Its reputation, once tarnished by subtle but pervasive discrimination, was now blossoming into one of inclusivity, warmth, and exceptional service. The changes weren't just surface level, they were rooted in a deep cultural shift that Sarah had worked tirelessly to implement. As Sarah walked through the bustling lobby one evening, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Guests of all backgrounds mingled with ease, greeted warmly by the staff at every turn. The air buzzed with a renewed energy, and the smiles exchanged between employees and patrons felt genuine, not forced. Her attention was drawn to a young family seated near the concierge desk. The parents, dressed in simple attire, were poring over a map, clearly trying to plan their evening. Before Sarah could approach, the concierge stepped over with a kind smile. "Are you looking for dinner recommendations?" the concierge asked. "Book mo back." The mother nodded, her face lighting up. "Yes, but we're not familiar with the area." The concierge knelt slightly to their level, pointing to the map. "There's a fantastic family-friendly restaurant just 2 blocks away. They have great reviews, and I can call ahead to reserve a table for you if you'd like." The family beamed with gratitude, and Sarah's heart swelled. Moments like these reaffirmed why she had taken on the difficult task of transforming her hotel. Later that evening, Sarah hosted a team celebration in the hotel's grand ballroom. The event was a chance to recognize the hard work and dedication of her staff, who had embraced the new culture and helped restore the Harmony Grand's integrity. As she stood at the front of the room, microphone in hand, Sarah took a moment to absorb the sight of her team, housekeepers, servers, receptionists, and managers, all gathered together in a spirit of unity. "I want to thank each and every one of you," Sarah began, her voice steady but full of emotion. "The Harmony Grand's transformation wouldn't have been possible without your commitment, your openness, and your willingness to grow. You've shown me that change isn't just possible, it's powerful." The room erupted into applause, and Sarah smiled, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. After the celebration, Sarah found herself standing by the ballroom's expansive windows, looking out at the city skyline. Emily joined her, holding a glass of champagne. "You've done something incredible here," Emily said, her voice filled with admiration. "The Harmony Grand isn't just a hotel anymore. It's a symbol of what hospitality should be." Sarah nodded, her gaze fixed on the glittering lights outside. It wasn't easy, but it was worth every moment. This hotel isn't just about luxury or appearances. It's about people, guests, staff, and everyone who walks through those doors. They deserve to feel valued. Emily smiled, and now they do. As the evening drew to a close, Sarah walked back through the lobby, stopping to greet a few guests along the way. One elderly woman, seated in a plush armchair with a cup of tea, caught Sarah's attention. "Excuse me," Sarah said gently. "Are you enjoying your stay?" The woman looked up with a warm smile. "Oh, my dear, it's been wonderful. I've traveled all over the world, but there's something special about this place. It's not just the beauty of the hotel. It's the way people make you feel like you truly belong." Sarah's eyes glistened with tears as she thanked the woman. That single comment encapsulated everything she had fought for. In the weeks that followed, the Harmony Grand story began to spread beyond its walls. Guests shared their positive experiences on social media, and the hotel became known as a beacon of inclusivity and integrity in the hospitality industry. Travel publications highlighted its transformation, and even former critics praised Sarah's leadership. The journey had been arduous, filled with challenges Sarah couldn't have anticipated when she first went undercover. But it had also been profoundly rewarding. She had uncovered uncomfortable truths, faced them head-on, and emerged stronger for it. The Harmony Grand Hotel was no longer just a business, it was a legacy. And Sarah knew that as long as she remained committed to its core values, it would continue to thrive as a place where every guest, no matter who they were, felt welcome. Standing in her office one quiet morning, Sarah reflected on the journey. Her heart swelled with a sense of fulfillment and purpose. The hotel's transformation wasn't just a victory for her. It was a victory for everyone who believed in the power of fairness, respect, and genuine human connection. And as she stepped out into the lobby, greeted by the warm hum of activity and the genuine smiles of her staff, Sarah knew one thing for certain: the Harmony Grand's best days were yet to come. The journey of Sarah Johnson and the Harmony Grand Hotel is a testament to the power of leadership, accountability, and perseverance. Through Sarah's determination to uncover the truth, she not only salvaged her hotel's reputation, but also redefined what it means to offer true hospitality. Her actions remind us that inclusivity and respect aren't just ideals. They are the foundation of any thriving community, business, or relationship. The story sheds light on the importance of addressing uncomfortable truths and facing challenges with courage. Sarah's willingness to go undercover and experience the reality of her establishment firsthand was a bold step, but it was also necessary. It demonstrated that change often begins with understanding, and that real transformation requires both action and empathy. As we reflect on this journey, it's clear that the Harmony Grand isn't just a luxurious hotel. It's a symbol of how leadership rooted in fairness and integrity can create a lasting legacy. The lesson is clear. Success is measured not only by achievements, but also by the impact we have on others and the values we uphold along the way. If this story moved you, we want to hear your thoughts. Did it inspire you? Did it make you reflect on how small acts of fairness can lead to big changes? If you thought the story was good, comment with a 1. If you thought it was amazing, comment with a 2. We'd also love to hear your own stories, moments when you stood up for fairness, witnessed kindness, or took steps to make things right. Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll ensure you never miss out on more meaningful stories like this one. Let us know what you think, and thank you for being a part of this journey toward creating a better, kinder world.